Today, we're looking at a case that really decides the typical profile of a violent criminal. Usually, when you talk about individuals who end up on the FBI's most wanted list, you are imagining someone who exists on the fringes of society.
That is the standard expectation, yes.
Yeah.
You look for a long documented history of violent offenses or a specific physical presentation.
Right, exactly. You picture someone who looks the part of a hardened criminal. Scars, tattoos, a demeanor that just screams danger. But today, we are discussing Jason Derek Brown. This is a man who looked like he stepped out of a catalog for California surf culture.
The physical anomaly is a major factor in this case. He presented with blonde hair, a strong jawline, and an expensive wardrobe.
He was actually frequently compared to the actor Sean Penn. He lived a life that, from the outside anyway, appeared to be one of absolute luxury and leisure in Orange County. And yet, this specific individual became the subject of one of the most intense manhunts in FBI history.
It is a clear case study in cognitive dissonance. You have the visual presentation of a wealthy, educated, laid-back surfer dude, and that is juxtaposed against the reality of a cold-blooded execution and a highly calculated flight from justice.
So our mission today, for you listening, is to really analyze the factual timeline of Brown's life. We want to track his transition from white-collar fraud to violent crime and dissect the specific mechanics of his disappearance that have kept him off the grid for decades.
And to do that, we are relying on a strict set of sources. Our information comes directly from FBI wanted posters, official investigation reports, court documents specifically regarding his brother's involvement, and the extensive media coverage of the manhunt over the years.
And we are just reporting the facts as they are laid out in these documents. We are impartially evaluating the evidence without taking any sides, just conveying the ideas and the timeline contained in the original source material.
Correct. The facts of the timeline alone provide plenty to analyze.
It really is a timeline that is incredibly frustrating for law enforcement, mostly because of the missed opportunities, which we will get to in detail. But let us start with who this guy was before the violence. We need to understand the man before we can understand the crime.
Looking at his vital statistics, Jason Derek Brown was born on July 1st, 1969 in Los Angeles, California.
Physically, he is, or at least he was at the time of his disappearance, 5 foot 10 inches tall, weighing about 180 pounds. He went to Laguna Beach High School. I mean, just on paper, he seems like a standard success story.
He does. He holds a master's degree in international business, and he speaks fluent French.
That linguistic ability and the master's degree, they are critical components of his profile, right?
Absolutely. They suggest a level of sophistication and an ability to navigate different cultures and borders that the average fugitive simply does not possess. His French fluency stems from a very specific period in his life. He served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Paris from 1988 to 1990.
I want to pause on that for a second because it is a crucial piece of context for you to understand. Serving a mission is not just about religious service. It is a rigorous exercise in social interaction.
It is. He spent 2 years in Paris, knocking on doors, speaking to strangers, and learning to present himself in a way that is non-threatening and persuasive.
Right. He is learning how to sell a message to people who might not want to hear it.
It builds a very specific skill set in social engineering. Missionaries learn to handle rejection, they learn to read people, and they learn to adapt their approach based on who they are speaking with. For someone who later turns to fraud, this is essentially a master class in manipulation.
And it is worth noting right up front that despite this religious background, he was eventually excommunicated from the church. The documents do not give us the specific date of that excommunication, but it clearly marks a hard separation from those values.
Yes, the behavioral shift is evident. Following that period between 1990 and 2004, he is established in Orange County.
And we are talking about prime real estate here. Dana Point, the Corona del Mar neighborhood of Newport Beach. These are not cheap places to live. These are areas characterized by extreme wealth, luxury vehicles, and high social status.
And Brown was not just living there quietly. He was actively projecting the image of high roller.
Yeah, he had the cars, the motorbikes, the boats. He was presenting himself to his neighbors as a wealthy importer of golf equipment.
This is a phenomenon criminologists often refer to as the mask of wealth. The reality of his financial situation was diametrically opposed to the image he was projecting to his community.
Because by 2004, the facade was crumbling. He had defaulted on at least one large loan. He had tens of thousands of dollars in debt.
And the businesses he claimed to run, Toys Unlimited and On the Doorstep Advertising, were actually operated out of his home in Salt Lake City, Utah. They were certainly not the massive international empires he implied they were.
So the boats, the BMW, the whole lifestyle, it was all a house of cards. It was a complete fabrication just designed to keep up appearances with his peers.
Precisely. To maintain this facade, investigators believe he engaged in check and bank fraud scams for years. He was essentially funding the image through theft.
There is a pattern here described by a Phoenix detective, Paul Brown, who stated that Jason Derek Brown likely perpetrated several unsolved petty thefts and home invasions before things escalated.
Detective Brown noted that he would use his physical appearance to his advantage. He would walk into luxury car dealerships, clean-shaven, impeccably dressed, and purchase vehicles using false Social Security numbers and addresses.
That is a key point for you to remember. He weaponized his appearance. He looked trustworthy. He looked like he belonged in a high-end dealership.
He was not sneaking around in the dark. He was committing fraud in broad daylight because people inherently trust someone who looks successful.
It is so much easier to commit financial crimes when you look like you have $1 million in the bank. But then, in late 2004, the fraud was not enough anymore. The walls were closing in financially, and we see this massive shift.
Yes, he moves from nonviolent financial crimes to actively preparing for a violent encounter.
The escalation begins in November 2004. Brown leaves the coast and relocates to a hotel in Ahwatukee, Arizona.
This geographic shift is the primary indicator of the planning phase. Ahwatukee is a suburb of Phoenix, which is quite different from the coastal luxury of Dana Point. It provided him with the necessary level of anonymity.
And while he is there, he goes shopping. But he is not buying golf clubs or toys. He buys a .45 caliber Glock pistol.
And crucially, he attempts to learn how to use it. He traveled back to Utah to attend a firearms instruction course at a facility called Totally Awesome Guns and Range in Salt Lake City.
This part of the story is truly bizarre. He submits to a background check for that course.
He did. He provided his actual fingerprints. Those fingerprints were sent to state and federal authorities, which ironically is what allowed law enforcement to identify him so quickly after the murder.
It is such a massive operational security failure on his part. But his behavior at the range is also very telling. The instructor, Clark Aposhian, remembered him distinctly.
Instructor Aposhian described Brown as an obnoxious student and notably inexperienced.
Right. This was not some highly trained tactical operator honing his craft. This was an arrogant amateur. There is a specific incident in the police report where, during target practice, Brown accidentally fired a live round into a parked truck.
That incident demonstrates a severe lack of firearm discipline and safety awareness. He actually had to pay the owner of the truck approximately $1,300 in damages on the spot.
And this happened just days before the murder.
It shows that while he had the clear intent to commit a violent act, he lacked the proficiency one might expect for the crime he was planning. It also highlights a staggering level of arrogance. He did not seem concerned about drawing significant attention to himself or leaving a paper trail, even while finalizing his plans for a major robbery.
So you have this obnoxious, inexperienced guy with a newly purchased .45 Glock staying in a hotel in Ahwatukee, and there's surveillance footage from the hotel lobby showing him talking to another man during this time.
That unidentified associate remains a loose end in the investigation. The identity and role of that man are entirely unknown. He could be an accomplice, he could be an innocent witness, or an unwitting informant.
We just do not know. But the timeline moves inexorably toward November 29th, 2004. Monday morning.
It was 10 a.m. The location was outside an AMC theater at 4915 East Ray Road in Phoenix, Arizona.
The target is an armored car guard named Robert Keith Palomares. He is only 24 years old. He is just doing his job, carrying the weekend cash deposits out of the theater.
The attack was a textbook ambush. There was no demand for the money, no verbal standoff, and no opportunity for compliance.
The gunman, wearing a dark hood, just approached Palomares and immediately opened fire with that .45 caliber Glock.
The forensic evidence details the clinical nature of the attack. Palomares was struck by 5 out of the 6 bullets fired. All 5 of those rounds struck him in the head.
It was not a robbery gone wrong. It was an execution.
Palomares was armed, as is standard for armored car guards, but he had absolutely no time to defend himself or dry his weapon. The precision of the shots, especially considering Brown's earlier clumsiness at the gun range, suggests the shooter was operating at point-blank range.
Robert Palomares just did not stand a chance. He was transported to Good Samaritan Hospital, but he was pronounced dead. Meanwhile, the shooter grabs the money bag.
The bag contained $56,000 in cash.
And here is where the getaway gets interesting, structurally. He does not jump into a waiting getaway car immediately. He runs into a nearby alley and flees the immediate scene on a bicycle.
The choice of a bicycle for the initial escape is tactically significant. A bicycle is quieter, it attracts far less attention than a vehicle speeding away from a crime scene, and it allows the suspect to travel through narrow passages and alleys where responding police cruisers simply cannot follow.
However, it is also the exact thing that provided the evidence linking Brown to the crime. Authorities recovered that bicycle in the alley.
And they were able to lift viable fingerprints from the handlebars. Because Brown had submitted his prints for the gun training course just weeks prior, and because he had a minor record for other infractions, the system matched the prints on the bike directly to Jason Derek Brown.
So within days, they have a name. Initially, witnesses at the theater were understandably confused by the chaos. They described seeing a Hispanic male, 25 to 30 years old.
Witness testimony in high-stress situations is notoriously unreliable. But the forensic evidence, the fingerprints, provided an absolute identification. It pointed straight to the surfer from Orange County.
So by December 4, the Maricopa County Superior Court issues a formal arrest warrant for first-degree murder and armed robbery. 2 days later, on December 6, a federal flight warrant is issued. But Brown is already moving.
He had a significant head start. He fled Arizona almost immediately after the shooting and drove to Henderson, Nevada.
From Henderson, he went to Las Vegas. And this is where he initiates his vehicle swap. He had been driving a BMW M3, which is a very conspicuous high-performance sports car.
He traded that vehicle for a black Cadillac Escalade that he had been keeping in a storage unit.
He ditches the flashy sports car for a more generic large SUV. Then he drives that Escalade straight back to Orange County to stay with relatives.
And this brings us to a critical juncture in the timeline. This is the specific moment that continues to haunt the investigators on this case.
It is December 6, 2004. The FBI has successfully tracked him. They know he is inside a specific residence in Orange County with these relatives. They're staging, preparing to execute the warrant and take him in.
This is where a documented conflict between different law enforcement agencies severely compromised the operation. The tactical detectives on the ground, along with the FBI, believed they were in position for a quiet, controlled arrest.
However, senior management at the Phoenix Police Department had a different priority. They wanted to manage the public perception of the case back in Arizona.
They felt intense political and public pressure to show the local population that they were making rapid progress on this highly publicized, brutal murder of a young guard.
So, directly against the explicit advice of the detectives who were actually working the case and sitting outside the house, the management in Phoenix decides to hold a live press conference.
They went on local television and officially announced Jason Derek Brown as the prime suspect in the murder.
It was a catastrophic tactical error. That press conference broadcast his name and his face to the public.
Brown was either watching the broadcast himself or he was immediately alerted by someone in his network who was watching. The resulting action was instantaneous.
He fled the house. The official reports state that he left that residence in Orange County exactly 1 hour before the FBI tactical team arrived at the door to arrest him. 1 single hour.
If that press conference had been delayed by 2 hours or held the following morning, the outcome of this case would likely be entirely different. He would almost certainly have been taken into custody that day.
That 60-minute window changed the entire trajectory of the investigation. It allowed him to transition from a located, cornered suspect to a ghost on the run.
So he slips the net. He is back in the black Cadillac Escalade. Investigative records show he used a credit card at a gas station in southern Orange County shortly after fleeing.
Then he heads south toward San Diego, which puts him very close to the Mexican border. You might naturally assume his plan was to cross into Mexico and disappear.
But he does not cross the border. Instead, he turns the vehicle around and drives north, traveling all the way up the Pacific coast.
He travels up to Portland, Oregon. This is the last confirmed phase of his movement before he drops off the map completely. On January 16, 2005, that black Cadillac Escalade was found abandoned.
It was located in a long-term parking lot at Portland International Airport.
But the FBI does not actually believe he boarded a commercial flight out of Portland, do they?
No. Abandoning a vehicle at a major international airport is a classic counter-surveillance tactic. It is a misdirection play designed to force investigators to waste time checking hundreds of flight manifests and international border crossings.
The sources indicate that after Portland, he simply became a ghost. The car at the airport was just a decoy while he traveled away by other untracked means.
But before he went completely dark, there was one final crucial interaction involving his family network.
Right, his older brother, David John Brown II. David was living down in San Diego. While Jason was up in Portland, he mailed a parcel down to David.
The package contained clothing and golf equipment.
It seems incredibly strange to be mailing golf clubs while you are the target of a nationwide federal manhunt for murder, but that is exactly what he did.
The interaction with his brother, however, was much more involved than simply receiving a parcel. David John Brown II had a criminal record of his own, and he was known to use multiple aliases.
He became a primary focal point for an obstruction of justice investigation by the FBI.
The authorities looked closely at David's actions and determined he was actively assisting Jason in covering his tracks, specifically regarding the BMW M3 that Jason had left in Las Vegas.
Right, the sports car. David actually drove that BMW from the storage facility in Las Vegas down to California.
But he did not just transport it. He deep-cleaned the vehicle. The subsequent federal indictment against David claimed he intentionally tampered with evidence by thoroughly scrubbing the interior of that car to remove any potential forensic traces of Jason or evidence related to the crime.
Furthermore, when the FBI brought David in for questioning, he lied to federal agents. They specifically asked him if he had any knowledge of storage lockers that Jason rented in Las Vegas.
David explicitly told the FBI that he did not know of any lockers. Federal prosecutors later proved definitively that he did know about them.
And there are serious legal consequences for that kind of obstruction. In 2007, David pled guilty to the charge of lying to the FBI.
He was sentenced to 3 years of probation.
It is a relatively light sentence when you compare it to the capital murder charges his brother is facing, but it firmly establishes that Jason had dedicated active assistance during those critical early days on the run.
That familial assistance provided Jason with the logistical buffer he needed to successfully vanish.
Now, I want to talk about why he has been so incredibly difficult to apprehend since 2005. We touched on it briefly in the introduction, but the Sean Penn factor is a legitimate, ongoing problem for the FBI.
It is a distinct operational hurdle for visual identification. Jason Derek Brown possesses a generic, handsome California surfer aesthetic.
He blends in perfectly. He does not look like a fugitive on the run. He looks like a tourist on vacation, or a neighbor mowing his lawn, or a patron sitting at a high-end bar.
Because of his strong physical resemblance to the actor Sean Penn, public sightings are incredibly frequent and almost always erroneous.
It is actually absurd when you read the reports. One of Sean Penn's actual professional body doubles was physically arrested by authorities because they firmly believed he was Jason Derek Brown.
That incident perfectly highlights the sheer volume of noise in this investigation. By the end of 2005 alone, the FBI had received and processed over 200 individual leads.
And they came from everywhere, Canada, all across the United States. But the resemblance issue meant that the vast majority of these leads were false positives.
It severely dilutes the resources of the investigative team when agents are forced to chase down and verify every blonde surfer in a wetsuit or every well-dressed businessman matching that general description.
However, there was one specific sighting that stands out from all the noise, one that the FBI treats with a significantly higher level of credibility than any of the others.
Yes, this occurred in August 2008, 4 years after the murder of Robert Palomares. The location was Salt Lake City, Utah.
This sighting is considered highly credible because of the specific identity of the witness. This was not a random member of the public calling in a tip after watching a television show.
No, this was a man who had known Jason Derek Brown personally for years. They attended missionary training together, and they had served together in the same mission in France.
This is someone who deeply knows his face, his mannerisms, his history. They are both stopped at a traffic light near the Hogle Zoo in Salt Lake City. The witness casually looks over at the car stopped in the lane next to him. The driver looks back, and it is Jason.
The recognition was mutual and instantaneous. According to the official report from the witness, as soon as they locked eyes, Brown reacted aggressively.
He did not wait for the light to change to green. He accelerated his vehicle directly through the red stoplight and sped away into traffic.
That immediate flight reaction is highly indicative of his identity. If it was simply a look-alike, the driver would have remained at the intersection. The instinctual panic confirms the witness's identification.
The witness did note some distinct changes in his physical appearance during that brief encounter, though.
Yes. The witness reported to the FBI that Brown had a much deeper tan, and his hair was significantly longer than it appeared in the 2004 wanted poster.
Which perfectly aligns with the profile of someone living an active, outdoor lifestyle. FBI Special Agent Juan Becerra theorized extensively about this sighting.
Agent Becerra suggested that Brown may have returned to Salt Lake City to visit old, trusted contacts, or simply because he felt comfortable and enjoyed the outdoor lifestyle available in Utah.
Agent Becerra noted in his analysis that Brown is very much a creature of habit. He values physical fitness, he likes looking good, he likes the outdoors, he likes the nightclub scene.
From a behavioral analysis standpoint, it is incredibly difficult for any individual to completely suppress their core behavioral patterns for an extended period, even when their life depends on hiding.
So he is confirmed to be in Salt Lake City in 2008, but he speeds through a red light and he gets away again. And since that day, the physical trail has been largely cold.
Due to the severity of the crime and his ability to evade capture, he was officially added to the FBI's 10 Most Wanted Fugitives list on December 8, 2007.
The reward for information leading to his capture was originally set at $100,000. The FBI then doubled it to $200,000 in 2013.
That is a life-changing amount of money designed to incentivize someone in his inner circle to turn him in.
And yet, no successful tip ever materialized. He remained on that top 10 list for nearly 15 years. However, on September 7, 2022, there was a major administrative update.
He was officially removed from the 10 Most Wanted list. His spot was replaced by another fugitive, Michael James Pratt.
Now, for you listening, it is important to clarify what that means. Does his removal mean that the FBI stopped looking for him? Or that they have internal evidence suggesting he is dead?
Neither. The FBI issued a very clear statement regarding this. His removal from the top 10 list absolutely does not mean the search has ended. He remains a highly sought-after federal fugitive.
He is still considered armed and extremely dangerous.
The top 10 list is primarily a publicity tool. It is designed by the Bureau to generate fresh leads for active cases where public attention can make a decisive difference.
Right. Sometimes, if a case goes entirely cold for too many years, they will cycle a fugitive off the list just to make room for a newer suspect, where the national publicity might have a more immediate, tangible impact.
Exactly. The federal warrants for murder and unlawful flight remain fully active. The hunt is still ongoing.
Which leads to the biggest question of all. Where is he now? If you look at the investigation reports, the authorities have a few prevailing theories based on his profile.
There are three primary investigative theories regarding his current whereabouts. The first theory suggests he is hiding in plain sight, possibly deeply integrated within the Mormon community.
That makes a lot of sense. His extensive background and deep knowledge of the church culture would allow him to blend in seamlessly, perhaps living under a carefully constructed, assumed identity.
If you fluently speak the language of a specific subculture, both literally and figuratively, you can navigate that social network with very little scrutiny.
The second prevailing theory is that he is currently living with a romantic partner who is completely unaware of his true identity or his past.
We know from his history that he is exceptionally charming and highly manipulative. It is entirely plausible that he has established a long-term relationship where his partner believes his fabricated cover story without question.
And then there's the third option, which is international flight.
Given his documented fluency in French and his master's degree in international business, federal investigators have looked very closely at locations in France.
But also places like Quebec, in Canada, or even Thailand?
Yes. These are jurisdictions where an individual with his specific linguistic skills and cultural adaptability could potentially disappear into large expatriate or transient tourist communities.
It is genuinely disturbing to think that he could be sitting in a cafe in Paris or relaxing on a beach in Thailand right now, just living his life without a care in the world.
The ongoing media coverage is the best remaining tool law enforcement has.
And the case has certainly had a significant cultural impact over the years. It has been heavily featured on television programs like Dateline and American Greed. There was even a feature film made about his life and the crime in 2022 called American Murderer.
Keeping his face and his story in the public consciousness is vital for a cold case of this magnitude.
It really is a wild, tragic trajectory to look back on. You start with a master's degree student and an overseas missionary. Then he morphs into a guy selling toys and golf clubs from his house, then a check fraudster, and finally, a cop-evading, cold-blooded murderer.
It serves as a stark clinical reminder for investigators and the public alike. The polished facade of white-collar success can sometimes perfectly conceal a capacity for extreme, calculated violence.
Jason Derek Brown was willing to execute a 24-year-old young man at point-blank range for $56,000. He was willing to illegally involve his own family in his escape.
He has demonstrated a consistent, unwavering prioritization of his own luxurious lifestyle and personal freedom above human life and the rule of law.
And he is still out there. So if you happen to see someone who looks a lot like Sean Penn with a deep tan, maybe take a second look. Thanks for listening.